There we go. Hello everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the workshop. Let's see if I can. Why is my camera control panel in the wall? That's not very useful if it's there. Also, I don't like the camera angle there. Let's see. Yeah, that looks better. Maybe a bit closer. Perfect. Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. And welcome to the workshop. I hope you've all had a fantastic week, and I am back once more. Spend some hours here, try to answer questions, try to help with projects, whatever. I'm completely improvising everything here. I hope you're all having a lovely day. Okay, also let me probably pause the playback. I mean, I can probably leave it running, it shouldn't hurt. Yes, as always, YouTube is screaming at me that I don't have enough keyframes in my stream, and I have still no idea how to fix that. So I'm gonna ignore it, because so far I don't think it has ever actually caused any issues. Besides the big yellow banner. But the stream seems to be running, everything seems to be working. Let's check the volume levels. Voices should be very audible. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to play a bit around with some of my audio levels here. Especially if other people are joining, because I noticed the game sound wasn't very loud last time. So I'm gonna try to just pull the music up in Spotify and pull the, yeah, that's a bit quiet, and pull the slider in general, no, pull the music down in Spotify and slider up. Now I got it, yay. There we go. How are we not friends? I cannot send you an invite, which is amazing. But I can just... Yes, so we will not be... Oh, the session isn't public yet. There we go. Session is public. We got it. I should probably set it to anyone. Let me... quickly... That was not correct. There we go. Yay! More people. Da da da. Why did a sign behind me move just now? I don't trust it. All right.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the stream.
It is. Why is it so bright? It's never. Is it always this bright? No, you put a fucking stage light up there.
No, I
That's
didn't.
why.
I didn't put it. It was there. It's part of the world.
You added a stage light.
Wait,
There's never been a stage light over here before.
What? It's no. This is literally just the world. I didn't put that
Canadians
there.
never had those on. Canadians always taking those off. I think. They've
Are you
never been
sure?
there.
I don't know.
Yes. Because
I'm
not blinding
there.
you.
You know what? Delete it now. There. You happy? See, now we're in the darkness.
You're standing on phone books.
I mean, I'm small.
I mean, yes.
Okay. Also, hello. I hope you're doing well.
Am I on the camera? I can't tell if I'm on the video.
It should be. Wait. But we
Do you
can
have a focus
probably
on
make
you?
that better.
Do you have a focus on you, or do you have a
Yeah,
focus on
but I
group?
can. I'm gonna go set it to group, and I'm also gonna try and actually do the user settings. I'm still new to the camera stuff.
Where's your stream? What do you have in your
I
stream?
think. I'm streaming to Twitch and to YouTube at the same time. Yay, technology.
Okay, I can see myself. I can see that I am indeed
Yes.
present.
Yes, yes. Also, I can do render preview for everyone, I think, and just need to figure out how I can. Okay, wait, I'm gonna set it to Word for a second, and I'm
What
gonna.
did I just do?
Oh, that doesn't work. That's stupid.
It broke my hands
And
by messing with OVR toolkit.
there we go. I excluded myself so I can actually click the button on the camera to hopefully make the thing turn on. No,
I
it's
just
moving.
broke my hands by messing with OVR toolkit,
Oh
and I
no.
don't know why.
Okay, I'm trying to find the camera. It's in the wall right now. It's focused on you, so stop turning.
I am doing nothing. I can't do anything.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe I shouldn't have set it to group then.
My controller's broke. Why did I do
I'm gonna
that?
do third person and then manual, and now I'm gonna click the button because now the camera isn't running away anymore. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. Now everyone can actually see the camera's preview.
No, ignore what I'm doing.
Just came home from a business trip and my room. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that your roommate is sick. I hope he will get, or they will get well soon. But yeah, welcome to the stream. Still as chaotic as the last few times. It's gonna probably take me a couple more to get used to everything. Okay, camera should be including both of us, and it should be in group. And I'm gonna actually make it lower it a bit. Yeah, that should be good.
How do I turn off OVR toolkit?
I think I can play a bit with the angle there. All
Okay.
right.
I broke my entire VR just now,
Oh, no.
so I'm gonna rejoin.
You can do it. I believe in you.
I can't close Neos. So
Oh no.
eat.
Oh no. All right, then I'm gonna put the camera only on me. There we go. But yeah, I hope you are doing well regardless. And as the other times, if anyone has any questions, just feel free to ask them. I'm gonna be here to answer them, or try my best at least. Also, feel free to come over if you have time and you have Neos installed. The session is actually visible now. So people will be able to join. Yes, and hopefully we are gonna have some fun projects to work on. That's good. Very good. Also, I do have to keep an eye on Twitch chat more, because I noticed this happened the last 2 streams actually. Something with my API integration seems to still be broken, because at some point the chat in World just stopped updating, and like the last 2 or 3... Luckily it was at the end of the stream, but the last couple of messages actually didn't go through to the World, which is concerning, because it didn't throw any error message and it didn't look like it was disconnected. But I mean, it's code that I wrote, so there's probably a bug in there somewhere, so I'm gonna keep a close eye on it and hope it's not gonna happen again. And I'm also gonna just take a look at my dash now and then to see if messages actually still coming through. But yes, so what do we want to do? Where do we want to start? I have done a lot of fun stuff today. Mainly messing around, diving a bit deeper into some systems in Neos and with LogiX. That's very good. Okay. Also, enjoy making and then hopefully consuming the food. But yeah, so basically funny custom types. It's probably a bit too technical to start off at least, but I might be talking a little bit about that if no other topics come up. Yes. But yeah, let's see. Basement just rejoined, so let's see if issues are resolved. Yay, welcome back.
Hello.
There, I'm gonna include you again. Did you...
Oh, you're taller than me now.
Better?
It wasn't a complaint.
Wait, no, I actually need those. Okay, my collider didn't like that. I can maybe make them a little lower. There we go.
Yeah, adjust my seat about it so that I look more like I'm standing. There we go.
So yeah, so I probably should tell you I have absolutely nothing prepared, like the last few times. So I'm see if people come over, if they do, try to entertain them. Also, why did the preview screen turn off again? What? Didn't I turn that on? I don't think I can turn this preview on remotely, which is kind of annoying. Wait, okay,
You have to turn it on from the camera controls.
there. I can snipe it. Just have to make sure it doesn't move anymore. Yeah, I'm still not like I do have actually a bunch of ideas which I want to use for making like a proper custom camera system with a bunch of like features that the Neos default camera system doesn't really have. I'm gonna have to see when I will actually be able to start working on that. The general ideas, have you seen the multicam switcher that Zeisel has made?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, so basically the general idea is I wanted to use the same idea where he just has like one default camera anchor and then just a bunch of his own custom ones that the default ones just teleported to, and like the position is like smoothed and stuff. Big issue was I kind of wanted to do the system like a while ago, and then I realized, oh no, it's really hard to like actually interface with camera anchors because they are like effectively just magic components that talk to user space. And
well, you can just make camera anchors.
Yeah, I mean, I can make the default ones, but I can't like trigger them with LogiX and automatically make the camera switch in between them based on some conditions.
Oh,
yeah,
correct.
But I can do that now because I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's actually kind of obvious, but I really didn't think about that until I actually saw how Zeisel solved that. Just make my own camera anchors and just teleport that to one camera anchor that you have around, and it works. But yeah, I have a bunch of fun ideas. Like I wanted to make some sort of smart camera system where you would actually be able to, like in a world that's specifically set up for it, like if just by moving into a different area, the camera would automatically like maybe follow the path or like switch to a different anchor and then change the settings, like follow head or focus on LogiX or whatnot. And I wanted to see if I can actually, if just parenting a canvas in front of the camera is enough to have a stable, basically just like on-screen UI elements without it jittering around when it moves. I haven't tried that yet, but I feel like it should probably work. Also, I don't like that the group thing constantly moves to the side. I might just leave it there. But now, but if I leave it there, then it doesn't include you. Can I set it to group and stop it from moving around?
Probably, but I don't remember how.
Hold
on, let me open mine and check.
If it's anchored, it just goes to manual. I can do worlds, but now then it's still only focused on me. Yeah, and group just like randomly moves around all the time. I figured out maybe I'm just gonna set it to world and make it like aim to the side of me so it's somewhat centered. I guess that could work too. Maybe. But yeah. So what have you been up to? Any fun projects?
Let's see. What have I had lately? Now I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, current avatar, all the upgrades. I have my little teleport thing, which you've already seen.
Yes. I like that.
Which is it's very nice since I don't have my old teleport. I've been doing that. I did something stupid recently. What did I do stupid? Right. The latest thing I made was let me find it. The tool that lets you non-uniformly scale yourself.
Oh, yeah, I saw you talking about that on the Discord.
Yep. Put it on tool shelf, turn it on, and then, fungus.
Okay,
it's easy
wait.
as that.
That's freaking amazing. I want to try that.
You can kind of... Like it is actually controlled enough that you can actually kind of put yourself back to, like, original position stuff. So, like, you can actually work it.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, am I too short? What's happening? Yeah, I'm the wrong size. Boom, there we go. Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Just go slowly.
I'm gonna be very careful with this, so let's see.
Turn it on first.
Hmm?
Turn it on. Context menu. There you go. Chungus.
I'm very thin outer now.
On Chungus. What's up? What is the opposite of Chungus?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti. You are not spaghetti.
Oh god, my arms.
Yeah. It
Oh,
gets real messed up.
This is even worse.
No, don't use that one. That's not gonna do anything. You have to turn it off.
Okay.
And then reset yourself. There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Wait, you're tiny.
No.
You're tiny now. Hold on. Okay, turn it back on.
Okay.
And then press both context menu buttons.
Press both context menu buttons.
There you go.
Hey. Okay, and
yeah, I put a fail safe on it just for that.
No, but I think I'm still kind of not correct.
Oh, wait, what?
Nope.
Hate to say it, I think you're broken, and
I'm just gonna leave this here.
I don't know what you would have expected.
Does re-equipping my avatar actually fix it, or does it move my user root?
Yes, it will.
Okay, because then I don't have to respawn. Because I don't know what happens to the camera if I do.
Because what I am doing is because you can't scale the user root non-uniformly. It literally just does not do it. If you adjust any of the scaling points, it adjusts them all to match. So if I scale on the user root in any direction, it'll adjust the entire scale to the largest value. So this scales the avatar itself.
Yeah, that makes sense actually.
Which is horrible.
Oh, wait, but that means... Wait, wouldn't that mean that it's scaling the avatar but not the proxies? No, the proxies are on the avatar. No, okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Then why did my arms crumble up so weirdly?
Because the controller points are not moved, so if we go ahead, let's select my avatar. So he'll show off to the camera.
Yes.
So if we go and scale, so here is the avatar root itself, or the user root itself, is the gold one up here. Put it on the table. There we go. So here, the gold one up here is the user root itself. This is normally when you scale. We can see the scaling values right there. If I scale myself up, we can see that those go up and down. However, they are all designed to match, so we can't adjust them separately. Oh, ignore that. So, we have to scale the avatar itself. And to scale these values right here. And that's what I non-uniformly scale is these ones. So that allows for the avatar to get all wonky. So if I do this, yep, we can now see. Oh god. Oh god.
Oh no, the inspector.
I'm trying. Yep. Hold on. Can I get it to the camera to present?
I don't think so.
I cannot. No.
Okay. You're non-uniformly scaling the inspector.
There we go.
You know what this reminds me of?
Wow. Fancy inspector.
Yes,
that's what it's fancy. So, but the things that we don't move here are the head position. So if we can see this, you can see that this is the position of the head. This does not move since the user root is not scaling. So the head stays in the same place. I do tell it to scale the user as well, though, on the Y value, so that you actually do get bigger. Otherwise, you would just get more like squashed in the same place. So it does make you at least like scale upward. And left and right controllers are also still in the same place. So the hands will still be moved in global space to match, even though you're scaling everything. So normally when you scale like this, the hands get, because they're under the user, they can go up further.
Yep.
But like this, there is no way to actually do that.
Yeah,
so they don't
okay,
move at
I
all.
see.
And wonky. There we go. I'm so glad I put a reset in.
Yes, it's very useful. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. This reminds me of that's the thing Yuki showed me once, how you can, if you stack a bunch of non-uniformly transformed just slots, then you can basically, like, the sum of them just adds up to some really weird, like, matrix multiplication, which, if you parent yourself under it, it doesn't just screw your avatar up, it screws like everything up that your view matrix tries to like compute, and you actually can, like, your entire dash just like scrambles together.
Yes, I would have loved if I could have set the non-uniform scaling up to work with that. But that would require putting the user underneath a slot and reparenting. Yeah. That's just not really what I want to deal with.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I love it.
Good meme.
Yes. So what have I been working on, honestly? Have you seen our ball? Or rather, Autopilot's ball?
What is this?
It's our conversation ball.
Oh.
Oh no.
No. I want the ball. Give me the ball.
There. You can do it.
I have the ball.
Yes. Goodbye, ball.
Will it come back?
Maybe. We will see.
It is downstairs. It's gone.
Nope,
no,
it's
not.
There it is. I mean, I do have a recall function, but I want to see if it actually makes its way over here again.
I want to see. Oh, here it comes. Come here, boy. Come on.
Oh. Almost. But now no.
I wish we could focus the camera on the ball.
Yeah, we actually we actually made this. Autopilot did the physics thing a while ago, and we just ball.
I'm too tall.
I mean, you can also laser grab it.
I'm gonna leave it. It'll be fine.
Fine. I mean, I can also just recall it. Boop. But yeah.
Tilt the camera up a little. If you click on the
yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Like this?
Perfect. Yeah.
Whoop. Perfect. Yeah, I also just played a little bit with the volume sliders. I really need to get my levels figured out, but I mean, I think we should be pretty much the same speaking volume now, just that the music is now not audible, so I'm just gonna turn that up there. I hope that works. Shouldn't be too loud. Maybe a little quieter. But yeah, so the idea is Autopilot actually built just like a custom physics system for this thing in LogiX a while ago. And because we were having our presentation for the Maker Talks, we actually set it up. So the idea was we have like a little remote here on our tool shelves, which was just like give us the option to like spawn the ball, destroy it, or like recall it. And we actually, in that world, we had a spotlight hooked up to the ball that was constantly tracking it. So whenever someone in the audience had a question, the idea was we'd just toss them the ball. And once they grabbed it, they were actually automatically in spotlight for the camera because the entire
that's awesome.
The visitor area wasn't really lit. So that actually worked really well. And we have probably planned, like, we have completely over-engineered everything. I mean, we built an entire freaking slideshow system for that presentation.
Nice.
Which was amazing. Yeah, we still need to turn that into a proper. Oh, okay, goodbye.
Bye, ball.
Oh, it wants to be free.
Oh, it didn't go outside.
I'm not sure what it actually bounced off of.
I mean, so that was a problem I was running into when I was making the man hack. Is trying to figure out what are surfaces that things can collide off of, that like users can collide off of.
Yeah, I mean, basically this thing just does like a single raycast, and it's also only raycasting in the direction it's actually going. So it will never collide with something that's like hitting it, like if it falls, and then I can't really, like, it won't collide with me if I go from the top. Well, kind of.
Yeah, it glitches out a little.
But you can kind of juggle it somewhat. It's very amusing. But yeah, it was like it definitely did what it was supposed to, which was keep the audience a bit engaged. Oops.
Oh, I'm super tall.
Yes. So that definitely worked. And I'm still like very impressed by how well this actually works. It's also always being simulated by the person that lasts through it. So for everyone else, every time it bounces, it jitters some.
I'm watching that on the stream.
Yeah, that seems to be a like race condition in the netcode actually. Mm-hmm. So
yes, that's because the physics engine, you can only have one user simulating physics. I'm assuming this is using a character controller.
No, it's not. This is fully custom LogiX physics.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's a.
Oh, okay. It's colliding with the gizmo.
You have the multi-tool. You deselect gizmos.
Oh, fine. There you go. It's deselected. Wait, I can bring it back.
Yeah, it's probably just a number of updates, so it just takes a while to get it.
Yep. But yeah, I really like this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Boop. And it also works really well, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, with the exception of the jittering every time it bounces.
And doesn't have great gravity.
Oh yeah, that's just a variable though. Like we just made it low gravity, so it's like we can actually throw it further, because so we could like eat more easily. It was very entertaining to watch people actually try and catch the thing. It does help that you can just grab it with the laser though.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, other than that, I have been working on a bunch of UAX stuff that I can't really show anything finished off.
Notice the world keeps like lagging out of people joining. No.
Oh, the world's lagging? I hope
every now and then I'm getting a judder.
Huh. Okay. Well, I already tried to actually clean this up and remove like all the ancient red prints and stuff, and replace them all with mini prints. So it should be relatively performant, I think. I mean, this is still mostly just a placeholder for me. I kind of actually want to make my own workshop world, but until that's finished, I'm just gonna borrow this one.
Well, if I am ever on and have the mental capacity, I will see if I can help.
Yay. It would be fun. So, I mean, again, if anyone is watching, feel free to just ask questions and stuff. That's the main reason why we're here, and also feel free to join the world if you have Neos installed, or if you don't, you can just grab it on Steam if you want to.
How many people did you get the other times you've done this?
Not that many. I think... actually, I can't remember. I got like I think 20 or 30 views on the entire thing, which I think was pretty decent.
At one time or overall?
I think overall, like over the 3 hours I was streaming.
I mean, to be fair, that's more than I ever got when I did my dance streams.
Well, I mean, you probably don't want to see me doing a dance stream, especially not without full body tracking.
I mean, I did without full body at first. It went pretty well. The IK in Neos works more than well enough for it to be passable.
It depends on the kind of dance. I think breakdancing could get pretty difficult.
Breakdance without full body, yeah, no, that'll get weird. Just keep crumpling to the floor every time you do something cool.
Yes, pretty much. But something that I have had a lot of fun with, coming up with new LogiX programming paradigms, basically. Also, I should probably turn around.
Did you say paradigms?
Is that not what the word is called?
No, it's paradigms.
Paradigm, but there's a G in there.
I know. I know. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm German.
I'm sorry, I'm a...
Paradigms, okay.
I'm a grammar bitch.
No one has ever corrected me on that. I think I've said it a lot of times in my life. Well, I mean, the more you know, right? But yeah, I mean, a bunch of that we kind of just made for the more or less invented for the dash calendar, I think, because I haven't really seen anyone else do that. Have you seen how we came up with basically dynamic callbacks?
Dynamic callbacks, like a callback function in a script?
Yes, well, pretty much. So,
something like that before.
Let's see. I can probably show this off. So let's grab a dynamic import. Okay, I think we might just. I can probably show that off. That's something that I can take a look at. Let's see. Can we get this? Oh, I'm gonna have to build this mirror, don't I? Oh, that's gonna be fun.
You see my video probably. It is yeah, no, I've had experience with that. With showing to somebody else. Do it to your right. It's much easier than doing it mirrored is doing it to your right.
Okay, then then I'm gonna just put it here. Okay, that might work better.
Do it to your right, then you can gesture to the right. It takes up the blank space on the screen.
Yeah, okay. So let's see.
Still sucks, but
general idea. We have these things in here that are called dynamic impulses, and they are basically a way to remote control LogiX in a way. So I'm just gonna give this a tag. I'm just gonna call it tag because I'm smart like that. And this would be a dynamic impulse receiver. It has a tag and it exists in the world. And I can also spawn another node, which is a dynamic impulse trigger. Oops, that's very big. There we go. I'm just gonna give it the same string, but other than that, they aren't actually connected, right? But what I can do is if I give this one an impulse, that should actually... No, does it not use the world space by default? Okay, maybe.
No, you need to give it a root by yeah.
Then
world root.
I'm just gonna throw the world root in there. Very big root slot. I mean, it's the biggest slot in the world, so. Okay, so basically we are just now firing a dynamic impulse just to the entire world. I'm going to click the button here and you see that this one actually did trigger an impulse, even though they aren't really connected, with the exception that they use the same input for the tag there, but that's not really connected. So this is a very easy way to basically like call different parts of code remotely without having them all to be physically connected with one another, which is great. Because if you're building big projects, you kind of do want to modularize it as best as you can.
A system I have that uses that I've done with that is this sword. Where's the sword? There it is. Which is from the anime recreators. Whenever you grab it, it creates all these swords around you.
Oh my god.
And this power, the power while exists on the sword when you grab it. So I've deleted the sword, it stays on you. And it's a gesture-based system. Very fun to play with.
Yeah, I can see that.
What you can do is whenever you want to take it off, because it's currently on my avatar, you can grab a sword and transfer it onto the sword. Now you can grab it. You have to equip it, so you have to drop your tool.
Oh, it does. Aha!
And now you have it. And so yeah, I've used the dynamic impulses to grab the slot and transfer the slot and tooltip references back and forth, so that whenever the new sword that I grab, I can do the drop right there. Click that, and then that. And it references this sword, so the power can be dropped back onto it.
Ah, okay, yeah, that's smart.
So every time it gets dropped on, this gets the power reference to it. Anytime a new one gets out, it pulls it out, and it says, okay, we've created a new sword, have that sword ping the system with itself, and then have the system go back to the sword and say, here's the slot for the system so that you can go ahead and install it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. I mean, I've used them in plenty of different things. I don't think I have any on my tool that use them, at least in a way that's exposed. But I always like to try and kind of compare the LogiX style of writing programs to traditional programming. So if you would to think about this, this would be almost, or it could be almost akin to like a function call, with the big caveat that if we would have multiple impulse receivers here, they would actually all be called. So you're not just calling a single one. But there's one thing here lacking, which a function call in traditional programming would have, and that is a way to get a value back, right? So I have my caller here, the dynamic impulse trigger, and I can trigger it, and I get the information, so I can run whatever code is here. But I don't have actually any way to get, like, from that code here, get any information back, unless I would, basically at the end of that execution there, I would have a new dynamic variable trigger, and then I would have a second dynamic or just a second tag, which I'm just gonna call done, right? And then I could add another listener here to the other code, and then it waits for done. The problem there arises. This will work, so I will be able to still trigger a follow-up action in a different piece of code that's physically not connected. The problem there is if you want to make this a function in a way that you might want to call from different individual scripts without those scripts actually influencing each other, right? Because if you would only have the same tag every time, you wouldn't really have a you wouldn't really be able to tell easily where that comes from if it could be from different parts of codes. There's some ways around this, for example, you could make this tag dynamic and you could pass it as a value, for example, but then you can't really pass anything else. Which sometimes is fine, sometimes whatever. So what we actually ended up doing is, instead of... Okay, so I should probably quickly show that we also have the same variant here with a... this is just similar to the dynamic impulse trigger, but now this has a value, and in this case this is just a slot value. So I could just give this a variable with it, kind of similar to a argument in a function call. Which is amazing, but still this doesn't really solve the issue of, if I get a callback, how do I make sure easily that I get it in a place where I actually, again, I could use just the slot here, and then I could compare if the impulse triggers, is it the same slot? But then you still end up with a lot of pieces of code that are all different code, but they have to, this dynamic impulse will have to target a common hierarchy, basically, because all of these listeners will have to... It gets a bit messy, and also if you do rapid impulses, it can quickly you can run into performance issues there. So a very fun concept that we came up with is, instead of... Okay, let's actually keep that there. So I'm gonna build the same kind of idea here. And I'm also going to grab another impulse receiver, and this is just going to be our callback, right? So the idea is this is going to listen to an impulse that just uses the tag done. So basically how I just explained it. But the difference here is now what value we actually give this impulse. So first of all, we want to actually, because we're now using a dynamic impulse trigger with value, we want to also use a receiver with value, and it has to use the same value type. So in this case, You see this just replaces our old dynamic impulse receiver, and now we have the value that we were passing through. So what we ended up doing was the value that we want to put into this call here, the dynamic impulse trigger, is actually the slot reference to the dynamic impulse receiver that's supposed to like handle the callback basically, which is a little confusing maybe at first, but the general idea is when we call this, we give it this dynamic impulse receiver. Also, I just realized I did delete the root slot. Where is it? There it is.
You deleted the root slot? Oh no.
Yeah, that happens. I'm sorry. Okay.
We're all going to die now.
Right, so now I can still trigger this. And what I can do now is I have the... like, this could do some, like, computation here, which might, like, take a while, because otherwise there's not really a point in even splitting this up to begin with. But the idea is then that whenever this computation, this impulse from the dynamic impulse finishes, then at the last thing we do is we actually call our done impulse, but we target it directly at the dynamic impulse receiver. So this will ensure that if we call the dynamic impulse from here, then it will always fire this receiver. And if we have the same call to this code in some other place, we can do the same pattern, and we can have a different impulse receiver, so basically kind of like an event handler in a way that we register. And if we call it from some other place, it will also only fire that event handler from that other code. So this basically ensures that you don't have any interference, and it is also extremely performant. Because, so what you want to do in general with dynamic impulses, you want to try to keep them... You want to try to basically not do this. You don't want to just send an impulse to the entire through the entire world. You want to try to localize it, right? So if you have like a piece of LogiX that has a couple of impulse receivers, you can just target, like instead of using the root slot here, you can just target it directly at the like common hierarchy parent of all of the impulse receivers, and it's going to be much more localized because it's not going to scan the entire world whenever this fires. But if you want to get this as performant as possible, then you need to be as specific as possible with how you call the, or basically where you send the dynamic impulse, or rather this one here. And in this case, the most specific you can be is literally the single node that is going to handle it. Of course, this only works if you only have one event handler. But in this case, because this is a callback, we usually really only want one. So that is a pattern that I haven't really seen anyone else use before. But we more or less made up out of necessity for the calendar, because we like very heavily modularized everything in that project. And we also had to make sure that it's as performant as possible. And yeah, ever since I came up with this, I do use it pretty much everywhere now. Mm. So this is a lot of fun, because of course you can also, like, this could also be a dynamic impulse receiver with a value, right? So as long as you make sure that you know which value type this trigger, so the thing that calls the callback has, then you can just use the same type as the impulse receiver for your callback, and you get the value back from some remote code. So you could have like hundreds of different little LogiX codes that all reference one common function here, and they won't ever interfere with one another. Nice. Without doing too much complex stuff. Well, I mean, it does get somewhat complex, I guess, but yeah, that's kind of how most things end up when I'm involved.
And when you start introducing callback functions to a node-based programming system that does not have them, it definitely starts to get complex.
A little, but it works really well.
Yeah.
And I mean, in general, so whenever I have a dynamic impulse that is only handled by one receiver, which is actually the majority of cases, as I found, because usually you have like some event and you only have like one place that really handles that event. I mean, sometimes you use them if you just have a collection of different like individual objects and you need to tell them all like at the same time one command. Then you of course can't target them at a single slot. You would have to target it at the entire hierarchy. But in most cases, when I do this, if the goal is to modularize code, to not have like one massive wall of logics, but instead like individual sections for individual functionality, then I do usually have only one like receiver that handles one individual event. So in this case, I actually just have like basically also always target the thing at the exact slot of the receiver to keep this as performant as possible. But I do put that slot into a dynamic variable, like a reference variable, that has the same name as the tag, so I don't get confused. And I just have like one slot with all my basically function targets and keep it somewhat organized and performant. Because it actually makes magnitudes of a difference in terms of performance if you target where you target the hierarchy for the dynamic impulses. But again, in most cases, if it's just like a single button, this is fine. You can do this. You can send it through the entire route because this only happens once. Like this isn't an automated system. It doesn't like fire like 20 times a second or something. It only happens whenever someone clicks on there, and it's fine. Like you only really need this level of performance optimization, either if you have something like we did in the calendar, that actually like triggers like 1,000 impulses in a single second or something. Because like the difference between aiming at just at the LogiX slot where there were like 20 nodes and aiming at only at the receiver node itself was actually magnitudes. It was the difference between freezing for 2 seconds when clicking the button and not even feeling any performance impact when you click the button.
Yeah. No, that's definitely important.
Yep. So, I mean, it's also kind of fun to come up with these patterns. I did have a different idea of getting basically a result back from dynamic impulses, but that's even more cursed. I don't think we should. Maybe we should stick to more simpler things for the beginning. Then again, if no one asks questions, I don't really know what I'm supposed to talk about.
Let's see, what are things that we can describe or help with? I knew this is why, as far as I can tell, Canadian mostly just sits there.
Yeah.
And waits for people to flood in.
I mean, like the last few streams, I was just working on some projects of my own, but we have
a person that's joined.
Person that joined, yay!
Hey, here's another fun thing. You know how a lot of user joiners will be a little like visual on the face or something, or maybe it pops up on their hand, or it's on a UI of some kind. I obviously hate doing anything like anyone else, so my user joiner is this.
Amazing.
Yep.
Hello.
The name I have the name is sitting somewhere up here, invisible under hidden layer with a camera on it. Camera only turns on for the split second that I need to render it, and so I just grab I update the name, I grab a quick frame of the text renderer, and then I turn that into a particle system.
I love it.
Nice and optimized.
Hi. Wait, welcome to the stream, welcome to the workshop. Let me find my camera control panel. I think I closed that, and then I can actually include you, and people can see you. There, let's go to group.
He ran off.
Oh, okay then. Wah. Maybe not.
I don't understand that.
Me neither.
I don't speak that.
But that is fine.
I speak 2 languages, English and computer.
I speak English and German and some Spanish. I did have French for like a year, but I can't remember anything. Although I did remember enough to actually, in my first year of Spanish, I just like failed all the tests because the little bit of French I still knew was really fucking with me. And I was basically just using like French vocabs in the Spanish tests, and my teacher looked at me and was like, how?
I remember back in college, I I think I did better in Spanish than any of my other classes, including my computer classes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was really bad at languages, actually.
For some reason I was terrible at school is terrible. Been terrible for teaching me anything with computers. So I've never done good with computer classes in college and such. I've always just learned much better on my own. So I came out with pretty bad grades out of my computer classes.
Yeah, I mean.
And look at me now.
Yeah. I mean, we had some pretty decent teachers, so I was pretty lucky in terms of only once I actually hit grade 11, because
There's a UI panel on him.
Yes. Up until grade 10, where I was in secondary school, we basically didn't have any IT kind of offering in the school. There was an IT course, and you could only go that in grade 10. So I was basically the entire secondary school, I was just waiting for it, because I just wanted desperately to find someone who can teach me programming, because that was before I actually knew how to properly Google stuff, which I kind of did teach myself afterwards though. So I was really hyped, and I came into the IT class, and I was like, yeah, finally, I've been waiting for this for 5 years. Now, teach me programming. And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is PowerPoint. I'm going to teach you how PowerPoint works.
Yes, the intro to computers class that you have to take. My teacher literally just was like, complete your assignment and then go play Halo in the corner.
Yeah.
They literally just let me play Halo on my laptop.
We played Counter-Strike.
Yeah, I was done in 5 minutes.
We had that was before the school actually used some central IT system. They just had someone just set everything up like a default Windows Server configuration. So that means there were no security things in place, and also because no teacher basically knew how computers worked. The entire in all the classrooms that had computers, the dedicated computer rooms and the library, for example, was where some computer were, and there was some classes the science laboratories and stuff. There were computers there. They were basically all hooked up to a massive network of local Counter-Strike servers.
Nice.
So basically, the entire school was more or less just having a constant LAN party.
That's awesome. That would be fun. I remember in my high school, whenever we went to the computer lab for Spanish, none of us they weren't graded tests. The teacher would literally just give us a Spanish assignment website to do things on, and so we were like, okay, this is boring. She's not taking track of this. I'm going to bring in a flash drive with custom Halo maps, and we're going to play custom Halo maps by downloading the Halo PC demo every single class to the computers, because they reset the computers at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Downloading the custom Halo demo, and then just playing maps the whole time and having a grand old time like that. It was very fun. We obviously minimized when she came around. My favorite story from that is when one time she came around behind me, so of course I minimized the game, looked like I'm doing my Spanish work. She goes back around the other side of the desks, and I open the game to see a warthog full of people coming over a hill right at my face. It was
amazing.
It was terrifying. I screamed. She was like, and I'm just like, nothing, I'm okay.
Amazing. Yeah, they did try at some point they made the computers reset themselves as well. Every time they restart, to kind of try and stop people from just installing all the games on there. But then because again, no teacher really understood computers, and so we had a computer class, and then it was oh, my computer isn't working. Can I sit over at that one over there? Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna log you in. Which was just the actual server. And then they just copied all the games onto the shared drives and put it into the folder that automatically get restored every time the computers reboot. Oh, so basically it was just from that point on, it was just always installed. They also didn't actually lock down remote control. They didn't have any group policies hooked up. Oh, my camera.
Wonderful.
My camera just killed itself.
He left the world. I wonder if that's... Oh, there it is.
That was weird. Huh. Well, let's put it back to world then. There we go. I did. Can I hit the button? No, I can't hit the button. Wait, let me manual. Don't move. What? That's not the button I wanted to hit.
You can open it on your controls.
Oh no, it's just broken.
Oh,
the screen is gone. Amazing. Well, we don't have any previous screen anymore. I have no idea what just happened, but I'm gonna try and make sure this stays on both of us as best as I can. But yeah, so we definitely had a bunch of fun there. We didn't really do. I mean, the teachers were nice, but it was like in terms of quality, like especially like at least anything that had to do with IT, it was just like really bad. Like there was just like no one really at the school that really knew even like the basics to really get us started, with the exception of like, hey, this is how Word works, this is how PowerPoint works. But the thing is, when I came actually into this programming class, I was like, okay, I want to learn programming, and he was like, yeah, I can't teach you that. And he was like, yeah, you're gonna make a PowerPoint presentation. I was like, no, I don't want to. I'm gonna make a game. And I had never programmed anything, never written a single line of code. And I said to him, I'm gonna make a game. And he was like, I mean, sure, if it has the contents of your presentation, then I don't care. And it was like a presentation about like different computer hardware, different computer parts. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to make games now. So
Wait,
what?
So just use like an actual game engine game, not like a thing in PowerPoint.
Yes, but the game engine I used was the Blender game engine.
The Blender game engine?
Blender was the only like 3D software I knew at the time, because I've seen some people like from the higher classes use it to actually for some science projects to like simulate asteroids or whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
So I knew Blender exists, so I downloaded it, and I figured out pretty quickly, hey, it has a game engine, because that was before they actually deprecated the thing, because it was absolutely useless. I
had no idea.
It had, like, I think they deprecated it in 2012 or something, I don't know. Or 14? I don't know how long this thing actually survived, but at some point they were like, yeah, no, we can't support this anymore, no one uses it anyway. I mean, it wasn't even good. Like, it was basically just some, like, just basically a runtime that's just, like, using the Blender scene renderer for the real-time displays, and then you could just inject some Python scripts. I just basically went on the internet, I just Googled, like, how, like, exactly for this Blender game engine, like, how can I make the camera move around? How can I make it look like a first-person game? I just copied all Python scripts I found there without understanding a single line there. I just copied it all into the text editor, watched tutorials, how this was set up. At some point, managed to somehow get it to work. So I had, like, a very, very, very basic player controller where you could, like, just look around in like, all axes. I do remember it didn't actually limit how far you could look up, so you were literally just like, you could like go 180 all around your axis, and then you would just run into gimbal lock, and the entire thing would just start like freaking out. But it did kind of work. You could walk around, so I then very, very basically modeled like a very simple room with a table, and I put like a computer case on there, and then I just made boxes. Because I didn't have time anymore at that point, because I really had to be good done. I just made boxes for the computer parts. And I did figure out how to make it raycast and like figure out what you're clicking on. So I click on something, and I managed to make it play a sound file every time you clicked on something. So what I did was I just went to Wikipedia. For each of the computer part, I just copied the Wikipedia article. I threw it into a really bad like text-to-speech engine. And like when you could look at the commands, you could click on them, and then it would just like play the text-to-speech thing. And I did, I think I remember I did actually pitch it up. I can't remember why. I think I wanted it to sound cooler. But it sounded awful. I mean, it was like 2012, like text-to-speech engine. A free one.
No, I cannot imagine that coming off well.
My teacher loved it. He had in his entire life, he had never played a single, like, game, basically. He had no concept of, like, what a first-person game is and how a first-person, like how you move the camera, like moving the camera with the mouse and walking at the same time. He really didn't understand that, so he was just like pressing W, letting go of it, moving the mouse, pressing D and moving the mouse. But he did kind of figure it out, and it was really entertaining. I have no idea how I actually managed to get that thing working at the end. But that was basically my introduction to game development, which was very weird, but I did like it, so afterwards I did just, stick to it more or less. I mean, I'm not really a game developer by profession these days, but at least I still do it for a hobby, and I found Neos, which is
to get back into it.
Yeah. I mean, I was involved in a couple of projects for like trying to make more serious approaches at game development, but they never really went anywhere, mostly because I just didn't have the time, because it was also when I started studying. Like the biggest project I was involved with was when I started studying, and I just realized, okay, either I'm gonna have to like abort my university or I'm gonna have to abort this project, but I can't do both at the same time.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I did actually want to abort university, but then I realized, oh crap, if I do, I actually have to pay the company that like sponsored my university all the money back. And then I was like,
oh no.
Well, shit. Yes, I hope you have a good day as well. Thanks for checking by. Will be fun to see you again. But yeah, that was fun. University, not so great, but like my actual technical college where I went before, absolutely amazing. The best like educational experience I've ever had in my life. The teachers were amazing. It was a technical college specific for like computer science. So people actually knew what they were talking about. Like, we started in the first year. We actually built a little dev board for like a microprocessor, like, and with build I mean like we actually like designed all the traces, we etched it ourselves, and then we put all the components on, soldered everything. And then in the second year we actually learned how to program in assembly on the board we made in the first year. And then in the third year we actually, I think it was like after the first half of the second year, we actually switched to C and also programmed that. And then in the last year when we had our final project was actually also like a C program with some hardware that we had to build on the dev board that we made in the first year. So this was amazing. Like just having the entire like a single project that was just like accompanying you through the entire 3 years of college. It was really good. And I haven't really seen this anywhere else. Like this kind of actual like cohesive style of teaching stuff. And I mean, in parallel, we did also learn Java, but that had nothing to do with the dev board. And yeah, it's also how I met a lot of very good friends of mine that are still very good friends of mine today.
I wish I thought about any of my college friends. Everybody I met in college just dipped out of my life at some point.
I mean, I don't have much to do with with most people. I don't really have anything to do anymore, which is kind of a shame. I need to try but I'm just really bad at like keeping contacts alive, and like whenever I chat with someone, I like have like 1 or 2 hours of good chats, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like respond tomorrow, and then I just never respond for like a year. So I'm really not good at keeping chats alive. But yeah, a bunch of like a couple of them I'm still very like in contact with a lot, and we kind of see where they are like in their like career now and what they are actually doing. One of them I actually had on Neos yesterday, which was pretty cool. So we actually showed like first we did some math. Oh yeah, I guess I could show that. Okay. Yes. So how good are you at math?
How good am I at math?
Yes.
No. I mean, so I am technically good at it. I am just very, very slow with it.
Oh no, I can't remember where I saved it. I know I did save it. I think I put it in my non-public LogiX folder. Yes. Okay. This is probably gonna. There we go. Wait, I'm gonna. Wait. Let's put this over here. There's more space there. There. I'm gonna set the camera to group. And oh no, that just makes the camera be behind the red print. That's not what I want. Yeah, I definitely need to still figure out best practices for camera stuff. I'm gonna put it over there. So basically,
this is just looking at this. I'm thinking it's multiple project nodes.
I don't think we have any project node. I mean,
looks like something that could be done with project. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, we use a bunch of dot products, and I think project is just a fancy dot product. But yeah, basically trying to figure out the closest, like if you have two lines that are limited in length, figure out the closest distance in between them and where on both lines that closest distance is. So we have the part at the bottom here, which basically handles all the cases when the point is on the, like in between the start and end point. And then we also need to handle situations in which the point is like clamped to the endpoint, basically, right? Because the endpoint is always going to be the closest point there. And that's what the part at the top does. That basically it's a simpler calculation that's just run for all of the four corners, and then it's figuring out which of them is the closest to the line and then just getting the point on there. A bunch of math, a bunch of very confusing math, because I'm not really good at math. But we did find a bunch of code on the math stack exchange, like both code and formulas, and we did manage to get it working in like a couple of hours.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah, Mars needed this for some project that he was actually doing in Unity, but this is also a fun thing. Like if you have like a programming challenge, even if it's not really Neos related, or if you have some problem you try to solve, like I find myself still jumping onto Neos just because it's much easier to actually sync you, organize your thoughts, and like prototype stuff, and then you can still like, just translate whatever you learned into the into whatever other what other software you're using.
So if I can get it in the middle.
Should be able to. More or less, yes.
There we go.
Yeah, it does work. Like this should pretty much cover all edge cases. I do like the bus we have all going on up there. I don't know. I think that's kind of sexy. Yeah, basically just two different ways of calculating it for the two different cases. I'm probably still going to optimize that because like I can merge these two together because they use the same input variables and a bunch of the like intermediate values are just shared in between the two. But I haven't really cleaned that up fully yet. I'm going to make this a proper module that I can then just throw into my public folder. But some ideas we already had when working on this, what we maybe could use this for in Neos, was actually sword fighting. So the idea was you have like two swords, and you can like basically track like when they collide and where they collide, and you also have the like if you go like a couple frames back, you also have the vector of where like you are basically moving towards, so you can use that to determine in which direction like impact particles should be emitted basically, and at what point.
Yeah, no, that would totally work.
Yep. So that's probably something that I'm going to try to get working as well. And then
I will happily help with that. I've had multiple ideas for sword fighting systems.
Yeah,
I had an idea that I need to figure out still, of making a sword fighting system where the sword, when it collides with something, it will actually like get blocked by that thing. So if I was to hit it on the counter there, it would actually get blocked and it would keep my hand in place until I pull back.
I've already seen something like some sword systems like that implemented. I think there's a couple of approaches there already. There's also some that just like basically smooth the motion of your hand to make it feel more heavy, so it actually feels like it has weight because your hand is moving slower.
Yeah.
Kind of how they did with Boneworks. I really like their approach of like physical like objects in VR, actually like heavy objects do actually feel heavy. Even though the only thing that really changes is how fast you're moving then, and like if it's heavy, it's just lurping behind a bit. But it's a pretty convincing effect.
I remember some things. I don't know if it was Boneworks or a different game, but there's one where the swords, if they were heavy, physically like would just like fall to the ground. Like you grab it, but you couldn't like lift the tip up of it.
Yep. You could with in Boneworks you could with 2 hands depending on how heavy it was. But then Boneworks is like, I really like the engine they built for that game. It was a lot of fun to play through.
I've still not played with it. I need to.
Yeah, I can definitely recommend it. That's for sure. I think it's probably my favorite VR game I've played so far. Well, besides Neos. But I also still haven't found time to actually play through Half-Life Alyx. I do need to do that.
It is very good. It is very fun.
Yeah.
And when you get into it, the ability to like play it like one of my favorite moments from that game is the fact that you can pull off some of the coolest stuff you could imagine in terms of like an action game. My favorite was when I was in like some tunnels, I think, I can't remember. I jumped over a railing and into an area that was like almost completely black, but I could see some zombies stumbling around. So the sequence of events went jump over the side, shoot the zombie to my right, grab a fuel canister as I walk forward, shoot the zombie to my left, take the fuel canister, throw it into the middle, because there's like this little gated area you have to like get into the side, throw it into the middle, pull the trigger on it, as it's flying through the air, blow up all the zombies in the middle, and then walk out.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean,
so fun.
I've done some stuff like that in Boneworks as well, because it's like very creative. But the thing is, so I really suck when it comes to horror games. Mm-hmm. And because I just like really get scared easily. Boneworks was one of the first like proper VR titles I played. I mean, it probably didn't help that I was playing it while I was sick, because while I was recovering from COVID. Mm-hmm. But hey, I mean, I did have time to actually get into it and get started and stuff. But like the first level where you actually like encounter the first enemy, which is like a really cool introduction, because like you see the traces of them, like dead bodies, but the first live one you see is like behind a fence, and like you have to go there, and only when you actually open the fence will they like wake up. Like they're kind of like snoozing, sleeping when you're not there, and then once they actually started, then they start like basically zombie like attacks. I was scared as hell. I was just standing in front of the gate. I know what was gonna happen, and like you don't have any weapons at that point, so you are like, okay, I know this guy's gonna attack me. How am I gonna do this? So I actually like looked around, got all the bricks that were in the world, like already positioned them so that I could like just throw them once it started moving, and then I like very carefully like threw one of the bricks against the lock so it broke open, and then he woke up and I was like completely panicking, and I was like, ah!
Just panic throwing bricks.
Yes.
VR is made for to panic through bricks.
But it was like once I actually got into it, because it has a bunch of like really cool physics puzzles as well. It's a bit janky here and there, but it worked extremely well. It had like it really felt extremely immersive with climbing mechanics and everything. It reminded me, like it really gave me like OG Half-Life feeling while I was playing it. Just the way of the levels were designed, the physics, the physics puzzles, the enemies as well. And then when you actually got the weapons, I was like, okay, like the first time I actually had a gun in mind, I was like, oh, finally, and I actually did like, but I was still scared of them. Because I was almost like, okay, I know there's probably got an enemy behind the door, so I just had the gun out, and I was like, I have to open it, and I just push the door open with my gun, like very carefully peeking in to see if there's any. It's definitely a game that I can recommend. I don't think I can actually recommend it highly enough. Unfortunately, I then kind of probably had too much hype for the second part, Bone Lab, when it came out. Mm-hmm. And it was like actually pretty disappointed.
Is it
but
because like just more of the same thing?
it felt unfinished, like very unfinished. They did a really good, like they made an extremely well engine, but they changed some things. So the main thing, when I played through Boneworks, Boneworks has a button on your controller you can click to crouch. Yes. I didn't know that. You have to crouch in many places in the world, and I didn't know there was a button to do it. I just crouched by crouching, like in the real world, and that made it.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, I know that made it so insanely immersive. But what they did for Bone Lab was, well, you still had the crouch button, right? And you could still crouch in real time, but they have they added a feature which you couldn't turn off, which is like basically automatically detecting if you're in seated or play or like standing mode and switch between them seamlessly. But that means every time I like crouched and started walking, it would actually think, oh, you're in seated mode now, and just stand my avatar up again, even though my physical me was still crouching. That was so insanely immersion breaking, and it really, because you couldn't turn it off. There wasn't a setting for it. But then I actually did like some research, and I found out apparently Boneworks, when it released, was like not even like a really buggy and not even like proper like average game. They have just like poured 2 years worth of updates and fixes into that game up until the point where I actually played it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna put Bone Lab to the side now, and I'm gonna come back in 2 years and play it again, and see if they actually fix like all of my concerns. I think I know Bone Lab was kind of they're very heavily focused on optimization, so it runs well on the Quest. And I think it was like a launch title for the Quest 2, so they were probably like under a pretty like strict time pressure from like Meta to get everything done in time. You could really feel it though. Like it did feel like very, very unpolished and unfinished in a bunch of sections. Like,
that makes sense.
The one thing you should probably never do in VR is make characters that actually have like proper human faces and blow them up to be 10 meters like large. Which is something.
What are you referring to? Yeah.
Like it was extremely uncanny valley. And they had one character like just as a hologram, and it was like supposed to be a human. And he's like very, very, very important part of the story. There was a big build up to that, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be really cool. This is gonna be some kind of like, I don't know, like you're gonna have like this faceless person over the intercom that constantly helps you out. No, he had a face, and at some point you just came into a room and he was like 10 meters big, and there he was. But they didn't like. He just had static voice lines that he was like saying like 2 or 3 times, and then he was just like silent, standing there, wobbling his head around a bit. And then no more interactions. Like, why would you put a character like into the game? First of all, like 10 meters tall, so like the uncanny valley was like really, really exaggerated. And then it just felt dead. Like he had like 2 or 3 pre-programmed sentences, and it just stood there and didn't say anything anymore. But just like he didn't go away, he just stood there awkwardly. Like that was the most immersion breaking thing ever. Like I think the game would have been much better if they just would have never shown his face.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm getting tired.
So like a bunch of these things, I mean, I also don't think whatever they used for motion tracking actually was proper, because it didn't seem to actually capture like a lot of face tracking information. So I don't know, he really didn't. It was a letdown. Yeah, I don't know. Also, again, I'm just gonna play it again at some point, and then I'm gonna see if they fixed it, if they improved it. But yeah, the previous game, Boneworks, massive recommendation.
Yeah,
it's very good.
I'm gonna get it at some point.
Nice.
I'm getting tired.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you don't have to say the entire thing. I'm not even sure how much longer I am gonna stream. Probably like an hour more or so. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, if you need help with explaining anything, let me know. I'm going to go run off to some other worlds and talk to some other people.
Yes.
It has been a blast to hang out here and help stream to 5 people.
It's fine. I'm just gonna do this like every week now, and if people come over and have questions, then I'm gonna help them. If they don't have any questions, then that's fine as well. Then I'm just gonna be standing here showing some stuff off, trying to work on my own projects maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm not really, again, I don't really have anything planned for this. I just want to make sure that I actually do this regularly, because I guess I kind of mainly just want to prove to myself that I can actually like do this and have.
I mean, that's the best thing to do. I did not. I have quit doing my dance streams, and I really didn't need to get back into them. Yeah, keep it up.
All right. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day then, and rest well later.
See you later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Whenever the world joins.
You can do it.
That's the only problem with the slow join is you don't know when you're going to when like you say goodbye and then you're still there.
Yeah, I know, it's a little awkward. And there she goes. Perfect. So let's see. What else could we be working on or showing off? I mean, I did already show my fun callback system earlier. I could maybe go a bit into more details. Just on impulses in general, because for now you've only really seen dynamic impulse receivers and dynamic impulse triggers. But there's a bunch more things that you can do with impulses. I mean, the easiest one is just like have a display node, spawn a button or an impulse input, and you can just click the button and it fires an impulse. Relatively straightforward. What you can then do, so this is basically just like impulses are LogiX's way of defining program flow, right? So you can branch this off like you would in a traditional programming language with like an if or an else statement, for example. So now we have like a very simple example here where we have one if statement and one impulse going in from, in this case, just coming from the button. I'm going to rotate it so I can actually click it. So if we give this an impulse, you can see in this case it goes the lower route, because this is false, like the condition that we entered here is false. But I can switch this to true, and I can pulse again, and it goes the top route, right? So this is how you can control flow. And you can do more than just like making it go the one route or the other route. You can also, for example, do loops, which you would do in programming with a for statement, and in Neos, for example, with a for loop. So we can have a number of iterations as an integer input. Still very loud sound. Wait, I did figure out where that join sound was the other time. It was like in spawn area, right? Spawn sound, yes. Goodbye. There we go. Right, so these loops are pretty fun, so we just tell this to iterate 5 times. And you see, instead of one output, we actually have 3 here. So what do they do? The top one gives us an impulse basically right before the loop starts. Then the middle one gives us an impulse for each iteration. And the top one gives us an impulse once that loop is done. So if I actually do trigger this now, you can see that we got, if you take a look here, the start one pulls exactly 1 time. The one in the middle pulls 5 times, so it says total 5 there on the viewer. And the bottom one, once it's done, also pulls 1 time. So these basically pulsed all at the same time. Or more or less at the same time. So it happened like very fast because it doesn't really take, like this doesn't have to do anything. Impulses in general, I don't think there are any cases in which they take longer than a like one game update to finish. And if they don't finish, like if you run an endless loop, it is actually just freezing your game until Neos detects that, okay, the game has been frozen for a while, the logic is probably broken, and then just like recovers from that. It has a bunch of safety features built in, so like that LogiX can't actually crash you, which is pretty neat. But like every impulse effectively executes immediately. But there is another thing that I want to show you here, and that is we also have a fourth output here, which is a value and like an integer. This is the current iteration that it's on, basically, like the index of the current iteration. So in the loop, we know in what stage we are. But you see it's 0, right? And even if I do pulse this, like you don't really see this changing. It's still 0. Whenever you have nodes that both have a impulse output and also some kind of value output, in pretty much most, or I think in all cases, I'm not 100% sure, there might be some exceptions, but in most cases, the data here is actually only accessible during the impulse, right? So this, looking at this right now, even if we like pulse this a couple of times, it's always going to say 0 because this display node itself is not part of the impulse chain. So only things that are actually part of the impulse chain, so everything that follows after like this impulse output for the iteration, only those things will actually be able to see the like value during the loop that the iteration count has. So what you can do is you can, if you want to do something with that value here, for example, what's an easy thing that I can quickly throw together? I think I can just show this with a simple write node. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a write node here. I'm going to make it a part of the impulse chain by connecting it to the loop iteration, right? So this is going to trigger as many times as we specified over here, which is 5 times. And I am going to basically give this the iteration number. And then I am going to get a value register of type integer, right? So this is basically just a place where you can store a variable. And with the write node, I can actually take this and like hook it at, like point it at the register. The difference here being that the register, like this is actually something that is persistent. I'm also just gonna pin that there. What does that mean? That means if this value changes, it will keep that value until like it is changed again. So if I do actually call this code here now, you see this will say 4. Why does it say 4? Because that 4 is like the last value that was written into it. So it basically like first wrote 0 into it, then 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. Also it says 4 because it starts with 0, but it did call it 5 times. That's just because in most programming languages, when you do like iteration or like accessing elements in a list or something, you always do it based on 0 indices. There's reasons for it. Most languages do it, so it's basically just convention. But yeah, this was effectively put in there by the 5th iteration. Oh, and I really need to make sure that my phone book doesn't throw me around so much. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, we have a code here now that can write something that is persistent. And yeah, and you can see, even though if we put a display here, even though we can never actually see this value change on using the display node, it does change, but it's only like visible to everything that is actually part of the chain. For example, this write node. And that we can use to take the value and put it somewhere where it's stored persistently, that like basically exists longer than the context of the impulse. Because by default registers are also synchronized. So when I put a 4 in there and someone else joins the world, they will also see a 4 in there. So while we're at the topic of control flow, so we talked about the just simple branches. We talked about having a loop, for example, to repeat some code. There's a bunch more things you can do. There's also while loop. There is delays. Delays are fun. So, for example, I'm actually going to get rid of the loop to keep this simpler. I can add a delay into the chain, and I can say, hey, you wait for 2 seconds, and then continue. And then we can see this thing has 2 outputs here. The one of them is called the impulse, and the other one is called on trigger. So the bottom one. Most nodes that branch an impulse off do also have a secondary output that basically continues the original impulse. Because the way this works is, so if I click this, you see the bottom one fires immediately, and then after 2 seconds the top one fires. The bottom one fires immediately because that's basically just the next one in the chain. Like, this impulse just extends further and continues after the delay has been registered. And after 2 seconds, because the delay node will just remember that you had that you basically scheduled a new impulse to fire in 2 seconds in the future, and then after 2 seconds it will create a new impulse. This does, however, mean that if you had, for example, how we had some value that only exists during the context of the impulse, for example, the iteration count of the for loop, or what that could also be is the, we were talking about dynamic impulses earlier. If we have a dynamic impulse receiver with a value, then you see this also has an impulse output and then a value output, and all this is the same. So this value will only be accessible by anything that is part of this impulse chain, and afterwards it will just vanish, disappear, because it's not really a persistent value there. But if you were to hook this up to a delay, for example, like this, then after the delay, after this one fires, you would actually just see 0 on here, because after that, because the delay basically creates a new impulse, the context is lost. There is a second kind of delay, which is called a delay with value, which is this little thing right here. And it works the same way as the delay does. Also, I just realized it doesn't really make much sense to put that in there. So it works the same way as the delay does, right? So you give it a number of seconds it should delay, or I'm just going to use the 2 down here. And it will also have one immediate impulse and then one delayed impulse, right? If I'm just going to hook this up to my chain here again. Or actually, let me undo that because I want to show something off here. But yeah, same thing, one impulse there, after 2 seconds, impulse there. But this has another thing, which is a value here. And if I give this some value that only exists... Oh, that broke the overload. Great. Thank you for that, Neos. Okay, let's try that first then. If I actually overload this into the proper value type. By the way, what that just was, if you have these ping sockets here, these are basically placeholders. These are not actually data types. They are just placeholders, and whenever you connect an actual data type, for example, in this case, a float, they will convert. It's extremely powerful, actually, because those are effectively using generics, like C# generics. So they can take any type that just exists during the runtime, as long as it is a valid type to use for that kind of operation, which most types are. And then the nodes themselves will just overload automatically to accommodate that thing, that type, which is amazing. But yeah, if you have, I'm gonna now get rid of this part. But if you have a setup like this, for example. You can use the delay with value to basically, when you register the impulse, or when you schedule the impulse after 2 seconds, it will also remember what that value here was whenever it was scheduled, and then after when the delay triggers, that same value or reference will just be passed through, which is pretty useful, because in many cases when you have a delay, you have like some sort of information that only exists during the impulse that you want to persist, and this is pretty much the way to do that. Other funny things you can do with impulses, there is a sequence. Which is basically it has like one impulse as an input, and then it can has as many outputs as you want to have. And for example, you can hook this up to like you could basically if you have a sequence of operations that you want to do, you can just hook this all up at the same time, and this will make sure to actually call all of this will trigger all of the impulses. So even if you have an operation that like takes a while to complete, if you have it on a sequence and then you have some other operation that are like following in the sequence. So if I actually pulse this now, you will see that they do all pulls, but they do pulls in order, which is important. So it's always going to do the top one first, then the second, third, and so forth. And if you have, there we go. Oh, I broke that a bit. Right, and if you have, okay, what was an example where I had something that was actually taking a while? So yeah, I don't think I can properly remember. But these will be all called in order, and they will not, like, if you have a delay in any of these, for example, like, this doesn't really matter. They will all still be called at the same time. So, I mean, you can't really slow impulses down to begin with, I think. But I think there are some that... No, I don't think you can slow impulses down, period. But this is useful if you want to change the events, and especially so if you are using nodes that don't have a impulse pass-through. Although I think most of them have by now. That was like added pretty much across the board. Ooh, yes, other things you can do. Now it gets very fun. I want to introduce to you my best friend, the impulse multiplexer. A very so at first it looks kind of similar to the sequence, right? Just that it has some more inputs as well, integer inputs as well there. But you will see that if I hook up multiple outputs here to the different sockets, and I just trigger the impulse, you will be able to see that only the top one fires, right? And it will always only be the top one. So why is that the case? Because in addition to the impulse there, I also want to give this an integer value, and this is once again a zero-based index. So by default it's 0. That's why the top one fired. But if I were to change this to a 1, the first one would fire there. And if I were to change this to a 2, then the third one would fire, right? And if I would change this to the 4, the value that we had earlier for the 5th iteration, oh, I can't actually type 4, then it would pick the last impulse. No, it wouldn't, because there's only 4. Sorry, there we go. This also gives you just the count of how many outputs you have. I've never really used this. I usually just have a static variable for that, because the thing I want to use it for, it doesn't let me connect anyway. Apologies for that. I think I'm also getting a bit tired. But what is like this allows you to basically have a single impulse, and based on some logic, you can like branch off a different path. So this is actually conceptually relatively similar to a switch case in traditional programming, right? You have some, with the exception that we are just using an index here to control which of the cases it fires, and that it doesn't have any like fall through. So if you don't break, then it will fall through the next cases. That's not something this can do. But we have a way to have like one impulse here and programmatically define, like based on some logic that we can write out in code, where that impulse should go, which is very powerful. We also have the opposite of this thing, which is a impulse demultiplexer. So if I am going to give this the same amount of outputs, you will see that this thing is basically just the opposite way around, right? So it has multiple inputs on the input side, and then only a single one on the output side, as well as a integer there, which will give us the index of whatever input was pulsed. So, for example, I'm just gonna get the old setup back, where we're gonna also, I'm gonna move my phone book there so I can actually stand higher again. There. So if we just, why am I pulling out the write node? Because once again, we have a value, but that value is like combined with an impulse, and this value only exists during the impulse. So I have to actually, like, the only things that can actually read this value are things that are part of the impulse. So I'm hooking up a write node here, which allows me to take that value and store it somewhere that is not context dependent. So for example, once again, this register here. So just a little variable. I'm just going to writing the value into that variable. And if we grab out the output here, so for now this is 0 because this hasn't actually been written to yet. But you will be able to see that I have a 3 over there. So if I pulse the wire, this will take the lowest impulse here. And the demultiplexer will basically realize that, hey, this isn't really connected to the number here directly, but because the fourth wire here fired, so index number 3, it knows, oh yeah, I was like, the impulse I got was on socket number 3, so I am going to trigger the output and also going to set this value to 3, right? So this doesn't have to be a multiplex. I can also do this manually. For example, if I pulse the top wire there, it's going to be 0. If I pulse the second wire, it's going to be 1, and so on and so forth. So these are ways, if you combine these with loops, for example, and also some other types of multiplexers, which we have, which are the default multiplexers. So we have a multiplex, and then we have a demultiplex. These are actually like the other way around, so it's always a bit confusing here. But the general idea here is these do kind of the same logic, right? So control, like, which based on what index, control where the like which value to basically use for that. So it's a bit easier to understand with the multiplexer, because if I give this, first of all, I'm going to overload it so it's the integer type. I'm going to set a couple of inputs here. So I'm just going to put a number here, which is 42. And then I'm going to put a number here, which is, I don't know, 7. And then I am going to... Oh, I'm really boxing myself in here. So let's do 2 maybe, and then just let's just leave the... Actually, let's leave the second input 2 and make the... no, wait. Yeah, no, let's make the first input 2 and the second input just 0, so no socket connection means 0. And if we look on the right here, we will see right now this says 2, because by default the bottom socket, which is basically our index input, is just 0 by default, right? So if I move this over here, if I were to change this index here, for example, I'm going to set it to 1. You see the output is 0 because our second socket here is 0. If I set it to 2, it's going to be 7 because our third socket is 7. If we're going to set it to 3, it's 42 because our fourth socket is 42. Right, it's the same idea, with the exception that now we're not talking about impulses, now we're talking about actual data flow. The big difference between impulses and data flow is that impulses describe an order of operation, basically. So the actual like program flow, in what order should what kind of operation happen, and like basically if you have if it should branch off, if it should go somewhere else. But this is a very like control flow or imperative kind of defining code. If you use just value types, which you can do, for example, I'm just going to do a little multiplication here. So I'm going to grab the multiplication math operator, and I'm going to give this a input, and I'm going to have to mirror these so I can actually interact with the input fields, but I can at least make the output for you the correct side. So if I say 5 times 0 is 0 and 5 times 5 is 25. So basically simple multiplication, but there is no impulse here, right? So this is just constantly evaluated. This is effectively real time without having to define any sort of program flow. So if I change this to 6, this will update in real time to the new version, to the new number, right? So I don't have to really like worry about the okay, do the calculation now. I don't have to program it. It's just constantly doing the calculation. Well, with the caveat that it is only doing the calculation if something is actually requesting it to do so. You can kind of imagine that as right now the thing that's actually triggering this calculation is the display output here. The display output is something that continuously like asks for new values, right? So this is, well, basically this is going to evaluate the graph backwards, you can say. So it's going to go to the previous node and see, oh, it's a multiplication, then what's the first value? 7. What's the second value? 2. It's doing the multiplication, and then it's taking that value. So the data kind of flows to the right, and the but the actual execution kind of happens the opposite way. So we have something on the right which is requesting the data, in this case this display node. It doesn't have to be a display node. It can also, for example, be a driver, which is something that we went over in the last workshop. Instead of just having, for example, what we did earlier, an impulse and a write on that impulse, we can also use a driver to basically have a continuously updating value, which can be useful for stuff like position, where if you want to have like a position defined by some operation or some math, you usually it's something that you just want to happen in real time, which is when you would use a driver for this. So as an example, what can I do for this? I am going to switch to the developer tool. I'm going to create a 3D module cylinder, and I'm going to spawn it right in my face. Perfect. I'm going to put a cylinder on the table there, and now I'm going to inspect it. Open the inspector. For this, I'm probably better if I switch into first person mode if I find my camera control. Why does this thing always hide from me? There we go. Smooth first person. Perfect. Right, so we have our cylinder over here. Right, so what I did is I switched to a developer tooltip. So I can point at this, I can press secondary action to select it. So you see it says cylinder there, and I have the gizmos to move it around and stuff. What I want to do is I want to now, with it selected, open an inspector. So this will create a new inspector, and it will already like focus it on that cylinder object, so we can see all the components here. And one of them is the actual mesh data that is used to render that cylinder. And this is a procedural mesh, which means if we change the height here, for example, to, I don't know, 2, 4, 5, this actually does change the height of the cylinder. I mean, it's also kind of growing into the table there, but I'm just choosing to ignore that for now. So what we could do is we could grab the LogiX tooltip, and we grab the cylinder mesh component, and while we are holding it, so we see the name cylinder mesh up there, we can secondary again. And now this only works if the extract mode is set to extract interface. But now we have basically extracted the interface of that mesh. So if I, for example, open it in a worker inspector, we can compare the two. Right, so we have the actual mesh here. And then we have the component cylinder mesh. And it has some settings. It has the height, radius, sides. It has some bounding box stuff, UV configuration, if it should be flat or smooth shaded. So a bunch of settings here. But in addition to that, if we grab basically, I mean, not really addition to this. So we can just grab any component like that with a LogiX tool and get out an interface card. And what that interface card does, it allows us to access all of the things that we could change manually from code, right? So because we have sockets here. So just pulling the interface card out means I can actually use this, like drag wires from this to hook it up to some code. This is how I can make my code that I write actually interact with the objects in the world. You can do this with any component. It's actually extremely powerful. So what I can do now is I can... Oh, actually, let me actually keep the worker inspector. Nope. Okay. Then I'm not going to keep the worker inspector. Let's spawn a new one. There. Hey. There. New inspector. Okay. Don't need 2 of these. I mean, I don't even need 1 of these. I just need the component here. And now I'm going to write some code. What I'm going to do is I am going to take a node which is under input, and it's just called t divided by 10, or just t or t multiplied by 10, t divided by 2. I'm just going to use t divided by 10 here. It's the same thing. It's always the time in sessions, but in this case, this one is already divided by 10, so it's smaller, and also it this is the time in seconds that the session has been up for, now divided by 10. So because we divide by 10, this also means this number takes longer to actually increment by 1, right? It's 10 times smaller, and it also takes 10 times longer to actually get bigger. So what we can do with this is we can use this to basically, like, this is just a changing value, right? We have a constantly changing value here. And we can, if we put this into some sort of calculation, then that calculation will also be constantly changing, as long as something is making it evaluate. In this case, again, the display node. So, for example, I'm in the mass folder here, and I'm going to grab a sine node. And what this is doing is, if we actually hook t up to that, you can see that instead of going getting constantly bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Actually, I think I'm going to just use t, because if I'm looking at this is pretty slow. So input just t. So 10 times faster probably doesn't hurt here, so you can actually see what this is doing. So instead of having a number that constantly increases, we have now a number that goes from 1 to -1, like constantly. It's like basically doing a sine wave here. And this already we could use to drive the height value, but it's going to look a bit weird. Because you can see, because it goes into the negatives, it basically scales. It's like you can see the thing kind of flips around. We don't really want that. But the thing that we do want is the drive arrow here, which means, hey, you know, that continuous value here that you're calculating, actually apply that to some component. And in the worker inspector here, we can see that the value is actually just changing in real time because it's now hooked up to our code. It also turns pink. Whenever you see something pink, that means it's being driven from somewhere, which can be LogiX with a driver node like this one, or it can be basically any component that has the ability to drive other fields. but let's not worry about the components for the moment. So we have our sine wave here, but it goes from -1 to 1. We don't really want that. There's a very handy node that we can use in math, in the math directory as well, called remap, which has a bunch of inputs here. So first of all, we have a min-max for the input, and then we have a min-max for the output, right? And then we have the actual value. So what we want to do is, we know this value goes from -1 to 1, right? It will never be larger than 1 or smaller than -1. So what we can do is we can say from -1, which is the minimum of the input. Hello Nordwick, why is your color? No, you don't. Your color's broken. Why did I not save that when I fixed it? I think I might have not saved chat after that. It's Mr. Nordwick without color. Okay, that's my issue though. I need to fix that. But yeah, so we have basically an input minimum and maximum here. So we go from -1 to 1, which is input minimum, input maximum. Yeah, I'm gonna have to see about that. I mean, I was pretty sure I actually saved it, but I guess I forgot. And I want to remap this. So instead of going from -1 to 1, I want to go from 0 to 1. So right now this is just 0.5 because we don't actually have anything hooked in there. But if we hook in our sine function, then you can see that instead of going from -1 to 1, it just goes from 0 to 1 and it bounces back. And if we now use this for our drive, this will mean we actually no longer have this like itself flipping over, because it's no longer going into the negatives. Right, so this is already pretty cool. We have a expression here that takes a changing value, the session time. It's basically turning it into a sine wave with the sine node. Then we remap that to be always positive from 0 to 1. And then we use that to drive the height of a component. In this case, the cylinder mesh. And you can see here in the actual component for it, the value turned purple, which means this is being driven and is basically changing based on our expression here. Now what we can do is we can also play some more with this. So for example, if we put a multiplication in here, right? So instead of just multiplying or just feeding the value directly through, we shouldn't this be multiplying with zero right now? Wait, is the default value of multiply 1 really? Interesting. I learned something new today. But yeah, so basically, of course, now we're multiplying it with 0, so it's always 0. But I could make this, for example, 5. And now it's going from 0 to 5, because we multiply the range from 0 to 1 by 5. Although in this case, I could also just basically do that through the remap already and save the node there. It's gonna have the same effect. But I think that, yeah, I think this is good enough to explain the basics of what driving does. So drives are a continuous change of a value. Drives are always going to show up as pink fields in the inspectors. And when you have the opposite to drives is basically if you just write something, right? If you do it earlier, like we write on an impulse, we write a value to a register or to some field, which we could also do. I guess I can actually show this here. So let's add a write node here. And we want to write to the radius here. Perfect. Right, so instead of, you see it didn't create a drive arrow, it just created a ref arrow, but I'm just going to point it there so we know where this is going. So now we will have an impulse and an input here. So on the impulse, it will write whatever value we put here to, I don't know, boop, into the radius. But this is not real time. This is only when an impulse happens. So if I send this to 0.5, it doesn't actually change until I click the button. So we have a change that happens on an impulse, so whenever some event happens, and we have a continuous change, which just is constantly changing all the time, real time. That's the two differences you have. But even if you can see now that I've written to the radius, it also did change here in the inspector. So I could also change this to 1 again. And you can see if we take a look at the radius here while I'm doing it, boop, radius switched to 1. So that's the two ways you can actually get some results from your code that you wrote and like actually interact like or change things, settings, values, objects in the world. Also, you will see that once I actually delete this drive node, the drive breaks and it's just going to stay at the last value it had when the drive node was still existing. So it was some 2.47 whatever. Now, of course, I could just create a new drive node and it would pick up again. Another interesting thing about drives, although this is getting a bit more in the technical aspect of it now. When I trigger a write, so for example, I use the write node here. I write to some value into some variable. So for example, just the radius again. So I want to do 0.5 here. And when I click this button, then I am going to evaluate the node. So my client is going to say, because impulses are always handled by the person that like they originate from. So I click this impulse on only on my computer is going to evaluate everything. In this case, there isn't much to evaluate here. It's just going to see 0.5 as an input. It's going to write it into the field, but this field is networked because everything in Neos is always synchronized, networked, and if there were multiple people in this world, and I were to push this button, then only my computer would basically evaluate the write node, then put that result of that evaluation into the field, and once the field actually changes, Neos will just automatically synchronize this change to everyone else in the world. Because everyone, so that everyone sees the same value in here. The difference here is that we have one computer that calculates something during the impulse and then just writes into asynchronized fields or into a synchronized field. I am starting to lose my voice, which is amazing. Drives are a bit special here, because drives actually are evaluated locally by everyone. So when you see a purple field anywhere in the inspector, what that means is that this field is not actually part of the networked data about the world model. This is just a value that is calculated on the fly by your computer, right? So if there's 5 people in here, and this is a driven value, then all of these 5 people will individually calculate the value of that number there. That sounds like a lot of more work than required on the first hand. Like the question is, okay, but why does everyone have to calculate it? Wouldn't it be enough if only one person calculates it? Yes and no, because this changes basically in real time. For the one part, it's faster to calculate it on the fly for everyone. But on the other part, it just massively reduces the network traffic, because usually you don't just have a single field. You have a world, and there's like hundreds of systems in the world, and objects and people that are running around. I also have systems on their avatars and stuff. And if every system that was driving any field would all actually throw this all into the network, it would just clog up the entire like traffic. So that's not good. And then everyone would be lagging behind, they would be missing packets, they would have queued packets, and then you have desync, and it's not fun. So this is much cooler, because this, like, once a field is purple, it doesn't at all get transmitted over the network anymore. But this isn't just optimization. This also has some very, very, very important practical implementations, right? Because there are some values that are different for different people. The most easy to understand of that being local user. So if I grab a local user node and look at what the value in there is, we can see, oh, user Jack the Foxeter, that's me, right? But if someone else were to look on this thing, like if Bob was here and Bob was looking at that, then it would say user Bob to them and not my username. So this is a value. It exists in a synchronized world, but the value itself isn't synchronized. This is different for everyone. So what benefit does this give us? We can use this value to basically control like things differently for different people. So the easiest example of that would be if I get the username, if I can find it. Username there. So again, being evaluated, this is going to be different for everyone because it's based off of a local value. So for me, this says Jack the Foxtrot. For Bob, it would say Bob. For Nordwick, it would say Nordwick. Preferably without the color brackets, but who knows about that? No one can know. Yeah, so, and what I can do is I can actually use this in code, right? So I could, for example, get an operator out. I could do an equality check, and I could check if this value is equal to, I'm just going to enter Jack the Foxtrot. Right, if the value is equal to Jack the Foxtrot, then we have a boolean here, and you see this has true for me because I am Jack the Foxtrot, so this evaluates to true. If this would be Bob now, if we're checking is the local user's username equal to Bob, then it says false because I'm Jack the Foxtrot, I'm not Bob. But if Bob were to look at this, they would see true, even though I see in the same time false. And this is extremely cool because you can do this. This might look very, very simple, but you can have effects that are local to one user. You could have, for example, if you have an avatar and you have like some HUD or whatever, you could make it so that only just you can see it and no one else, right? There is some other nodes that are oftenly used in combination with this. For example, there is the active user. Was it active user root user? Wait, was it not or was it called get active user? Oh no, I think it's under slots actually. Yes. There, get active user self, for example. So get active user self, you can see that right now it says null. But if I were to grab this, it would say Jack the Foxtrot. So what does this, how does it detect that I grab it? Well, what this node is doing is it's checking for the first user up in the hierarchy. So if I grab this, it gets parented to me, which means that this is now underneath my user root. And it will go up until it finds user root. It will see, oh, this user is Jack the Foxtrot, so that's going to be the value here. So if I combine this together with the local user here, and I say operators equal, right? So is the local user, which is always going to be everyone for themselves, equal to the active user, then give me a boolean. So right now, no, there. So right now it's false, right? But if I actually grab this, it's true. And it's again only true for me. And if Bob were to grab this, it would be true only for Bob and not for me. And if I use this to toggle some active state, for example, from an object or like a part of my avatar, like a HUD or whatever it might be, I can basically make sure that only the user that's actually like part of that's actually wearing the avatar right now is seeing these elements, and everyone else for them they're just hidden, which is pretty cool. Of course, you can use this then to trigger some other stuff. For this thing in particular, though, I'm fairly certain there actually is a node for that. Maybe not. Could have sworn there was a node for is active user, local user. Maybe not. Whatever. I mean, this is simple enough. Yeah, okay, fine, whatever. So we can do this. We now have a very simple logic to figure out if the client, so the local user, is the one that should actually be seeing these things. Only if in this case when I'm holding it, it's true. Of course, you can also do this with some different things. It doesn't have to be like a boolean. You can do the username, for example, have like a welcome sign. You can say welcome username, right? And then everyone will look at it and will say, hey, that's my name. That's so nice of that sign to welcome me, to greet me. But of course, everyone who's gonna look at it is gonna see their own username. And you can also hook this up to different settings. Like you can see, okay, like if you have a game mode, for example, you can per user, or if you're working on some sort of game, you can per user define like different things that it's doing, different actions, stuff like that. I first of all getting a dry mouth, but second of all getting really tired. It was a bit of a slower stream today, but I think I am probably going to cut it here. Aren't that many people watching right now anyway. But to those that were, well, I hope you had a good time regardless of it being a bit more quieter. I mean, I do kind of also stream at a not the best time, but it's the only one that really works well for me. Oh no, the chat died, Nordwick, I'm sorry. Nordwick, no. Fuck, I wanted to watch out for that. Why did this happen? It happened again. So my oh no, wait, the summit actually did throw an error. The service is currently unavailable. What? But that's... No, wait, that's the YouTube store. API errors, HTTP error? That's not good. I'm still live? Looks like I'm still live. But yeah, so... Oh no, that happened a lot earlier. Yeah, I don't know. It just died again. The Twitch API didn't disconnect or anything. It just stopped receiving messages. This happened before. I need to build in a fix for that. No, I don't think it's a color thing. It's not the color thing. It's actually an issue in the back end. I might just have to like build some code, and because it only happens to Twitch, the YouTube thing never broke so far. Well, with the exception of that like one request that failed apparently, but if it's just one request, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I can check if the YouTube chat is still working. So let's see if I put tests in there. Nope. Okay, it's just that. "503 Ren requesting. Service is currently unavailable." Well, that's amazing. Why did it kill the... Oh, because API request raised HTTP error. Oh, I actually did build it in. I shouldn't. I need to fix some chat code there. But yeah, for now I can just read the chat through my desktop view. So yeah. Am I joining the campfire tonight? I don't know. Probably not. We will see. I could, but I don't know. I need to rest first. I might. Maybe. We'll see. When is it again? Your request was more, less, or equal. It starts at 23, so in 3 hours. Okay, fine. Yeah, I might be there. I might bring a friend or something. We'll see. I'm gonna try to be there. But I can't make promises because I'm pretty tired. I'm gonna actually take a break from VR now, first of all. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Sorry for having technical issues again. Freaking chat died. I need to at least make sure that it tells me when something goes wrong. But in the best case, it can just error handle by itself, and then I don't have to worry about that. Although, to be fair, the YouTube thing breaking is literally just an error handler I built in. That's probably too aggressive. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the stream, even though it wasn't that exciting. I mean, we had Basement here earlier, which was fun. We had some good talks. We talked about how we hacked computers in school. Amazing. But yeah, I'm not gonna be streaming next week, actually. Not on Friday, at least. I might, shift the stream to Saturday. But I can't make promises about that yet. Definitely there will be no stream next Friday. So, after that, it should be back to the more or less default schedule, I guess. But yeah. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I hope you have a nice and pleasant rest of your day. Thank you all for coming. Bye!